Hello, I'm author Bob Pierce, and welcome to the studio. This obviously is not my studio. This is Saturday in the Park. This is Taylor Park in the middle of downtown St. Albans, Vermont. St. Albans should be pretty familiar to my regular readers. This is the home of Jack Walsh, the writer who appears in a number of my books, including Hunting Lilith, One Kill Hunting Lilith, where the entire town is the setting for about half of the book. Things happen throughout the city where Jack and David meet up with FBI agents and assassins and all kinds of other people. We make St. Albans to be a whole lot more than the quaint and interesting little Vermont town that it actually is. But there is so much history here that one's imagination just cannot help but go wild. St. Albans is a very historic city. It's very old, and in some places really old, going back to the colonial years and so forth. And its greatest claim to fame, historically speaking, is that it is the site of the northernmost battle of the Civil War. Right here in central Main Street here is Taylor Park, a little to the east, or to the west rather, where I'm sitting. And just beyond that is Main Street. Confederate spies came up here to rob the banks toward the end of the war. Of course, the Confederacy getting pretty desperate toward the end of the war, and launched a few of these campaigns. The idea was to rob the banks, make off with the cash, and burn down the city. Well, they got away with the money, but they didn't get away with burning down the city. The folks who live here put the flames out before any real damage was ever done. They made their way north and split up, and the main group of them, with the money, went right toward Montreal, the border not being more than, I don't know, maybe half an hour from here by car. Probably took them a couple of hours. And the other group took a more easterly direction, and they were caught up with by a bunch of volunteers and essentially a posse, but some of it was kind of official military as well, veterans of the Civil War and part of General George Stannard's second Vermont Volunteers. And Howard Coffin has written quite a book here about his exploits at Gettysburg, which essentially ended the battle by stopping Pickett's charge. He and his 2nd Vermont Volunteers. They were getting down to the very end of their hitch, and it was like the last hurrah. They were all supposed to go home after that, and so they really distinguished themselves, and Stannard became a hero here in northern Vermont. So anyway, that historically is the great claim to fame here. Shortly after the war, another little historical nugget, the Irish-American Fenians, they used Taylor Park here to stage their invasion of Canada. Yeah, you probably never heard about that. Well, probably because it was such a monumental failure. But the idea was to get the British engaged in defending Canada so that their brothers and sisters back on the island in Ireland could mount a new revolution. It didn't work, obviously. So anyway, we're going to take a look at some other little parts and pieces of the city here to kind of just kind of show you around St. Albans, the home of Jack Walsh and David Wharton. So the town of St. Albans is located on the eastern side of Lake Champlain, which divides Vermont from upstate New York. Supposedly the largest inland lake other than the Great Lakes in the Midwest. It's on Route 7, which runs from Long Island Sound all the way down in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and all the way north to the Canadian border, which is not too many miles from here. Along the way, Route 7 has a number of different names, but in a lot of the towns, including this town, it's Main Street. A lot of downtown businesses show up in my book, One Kill Hunting Lilith, and in some other books as well. But in this particular book, all along Main Street from north to south, the Weldon Movie Theater, Eaton's Fine Jewelry Store, the UPS store, which, by the way, in reality has been very helpful in the whole book business, Twig's Restaurant, the Aubuchon Hardware Store, which is actually Aiken's Hardware Store in the various books, and Mimo's Restaurant, which is on the southern end of Main Street, which is where Jack and David meet up with the FBI agents and have any number of different conversations about life in general. So all of these places and several others, as well as various streets and intersections and things, appear in the book. Then that's all part of what helps to make it real. If you do that, if you keep some sort of context going in your books, then your readers will see these locations and see these juxtapositions of the different things in your book as being very realistic. You want to have in your mind a really good picture of the city or town that you're setting your book in, so that you know the juxtaposition of the different landmarks that you're going to use, businesses, streets, intersections, so on and so forth, so that when your readers read your book, it all comes off as real. It's kind of hard to envision things when they don't really fit together right. And in that sense, you have to be very cognizant of your reader's ability to imagine what you're trying to express to them. It's hard to be clear, so when you have some sort of a context to keep it focused and basically keep all the ducks in line and all of that, then it makes it easier for your readers to envision the story that you're trying to tell. There are so many facets to this beautiful little town here. I've come to really know and love this town and have learned a lot of the little nooks and crannies and the things that go on here. For example, if you're ever hungry, you won't leave hungry if you come to St. Albans. There are over 20 restaurants in this little city, and between St. Albans City, town, and down by the lakefront, let's see, I wrote them all down because there's no way I'm going to remember all this. Over 20 restaurants, including a bagel shop, a sports bar, an Irish pub, well, sort of. There are at least 4 Asian restaurants in town. We have a famous seafood restaurant right on the corner of the park here. There's a sophisticated bistro, a place called Twig's. You'll see that in one of my books. All the usual fast food restaurants, McDonald's and Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I think there's a Taco Bell up there too on the north end of town. There is a huge pharmaceutical plant here which employs many of the people who live here and in surrounding towns. A sprawling Homeland Defense facility where they process visas, among other things. There's a rifle range. There's local, state police, and a city sheriff's department all in this town, as well as the border patrol, since we are so close to the Canadian border. There's a state prison, and ice cream stands. They call them creamies up here, soft ice cream. They're all over the place. And of course, being on the lake, we have a beach. So and the list, I mean, I could fill out another 5 or 6 of these cards with other facets of this town. It's just a beautiful, beautiful town. Right now, it's Saturday morning in the summertime, and in the park, just to my right, the weekly farmers market is in full gear. There's a collection of little tents and people selling all kinds of goodies, produce, whatever's in season right now. It's a little early for some of it. Baked goods, wine, maple popcorn. If you've never tried it, you've got to get a bag of that. And all kinds of things. I mean, really, just amazing array of things at the farmers market over here. So that's summertime here in St. Albans, Vermont. And I do invite you. I'm not being paid by the St. Albans Tourist Bureau, if there is one. I just love this city, and I want to invite you to come up and enjoy it yourself one of these days. Summer, winter, the fall. This is Vermont, after all. The colors are just amazing. So check it out, St. Albans, Vermont, in the fall. So why did we just spend the bulk of this video showing you the beautiful town on a summer's day of St. Albans, Vermont? Well, the reason is, well, you've heard the credo, I'm sure, if you've been writing for any length of time. Write what you know, and you got to know the place that you're setting your book in. And I know this city pretty well. Every street, every corner, a lot of the historic buildings, and much of it appears in my books, particularly in Lilith. One of the things you have to keep in mind is that your readers, you don't want to give them everything. You want to give them just enough to be able to create the picture in their minds of what you're trying to tell them. And that goes for the context of where you've set the story. But it has to work. It has to work. The guys go back and forth to this city throughout the course of the book. And of course they go everywhere else in between. But every time they come back, what they do here, where they go, who they meet and so forth, has to fit together like the parts of a puzzle. And so you need to have some kind of a context in your own mind of how all that comes together, so that when you do, people can envision it and not question whether or not, well, that doesn't make sense because he went there earlier in the book, or he went over there, and whatever. You want to make sure it all fits together like it should. So use the knowledge of the town that you maybe grew up in, or like me, I don't live here. I came here, I moved to the area about 10, 12 years ago, and I just got to know this city and then wanted to use it for my book, so I made it my business to learn everything I could about this town. This town has also been other towns, using it as a blueprint, or street map, if you will, for other towns that appear in other books under different names, different businesses on Main Street and so forth. But this way I can keep the context in my mind straight, and as the characters go through what they do in the book, everything fits together like it's supposed to. So in other videos coming up, we'll be looking at character development, how to make your characters real to your readers. That's hard. I'll be honest with you. That is not an easy thing to do, and that is where a lot of writers really kind of fall down. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We showed you in another video already how to find ideas to make up your characters, and then we're going to show you how to flesh them out and develop them into whatever you want them to really be. We'll talk about story arc, how to fabricate your story from the beginning to the end, how to build into that climax at the end. And we'll talk about layout and design. When you get to the publishing part, how to work with a self-publishing company, how to prepare your materials, and whether you're going to do the work yourself or hire it out, so at least you are knowledgeable and can ask all the right questions and tell the people who do the work for you how you want it done. So until the next time, I'm Bob Pierce from the studio.